Hey, you're listening to Blindsight. Let's go. Mental health isn't something to take lightly. It's time to fight. It's time to thrive. Let's do this.
Welcome to Blindsight. This is Bill Lundgren, your host, and with Jonathan Price, our co-host. And we're going to be talking today and beginning a whole series of programs on AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, which is an extremely influential and extremely important help in getting people sober. And it's important, in my mind, that we talk about addiction as a mental health issue. We talk about addiction, particularly for those in the blindness community. Unfortunately, the blindness community has a 3 times higher rate of alcoholism than the average population. And there are a lot of reasons for that, and we'll get into that as we go along. But the point is that it's a serious matter for the blindness community, and it's one that can be resolved, or people can get help more easily than they think, and get sober and be able to do whatever it is they want to achieve. So, Jonathan, are you there?
Hey, Bill. Yeah, I'm here. I'm excited. And, this is going to be a really interesting conversation because, oddly enough, I'm probably one of the few people who has not had an intimate encounter with the 12-step program or AA. So all of this information is going to be very green to me. And I mean, even in doing research for this show and preparing has been a very different animal for me to tackle. And so I'm excited to kind of put all of the questions onto you, and you get to, you've been doing this for, a long time, 30, 40, 50, 70 years.
Yeah. In the days, I started out in the Stone Age, where we used clubs to get our food and so forth. That's when I began in this field.
Heck yeah. That's awesome. But it's going to be a fun conversation. And so I want to set this up by saying, if you're going through, or you yourself or your family, you're starting to see some signs that you may need some help, we're going to take you from the beginning, and we're going to be covering this amazing process that has helped. God, I don't even know the numbers of people since its conception. And so all that to say is, you're not alone. We're all doing this together. We are here for you. We want to provide so many resources, and we've got experts coming on in the next couple of months that are going to dive into some of these steps hyper specifically, and it's going to be amazing. But Bill, what I'd like to start off with is the Oxford group. Everything kind of came out of this Oxford group. Can you tell us what the Oxford group was, how it was founded, and we'll just kind of start there.
Okay. Well, this has been fun for me to do this kind of research, but there's something, if you're an Episcopalian, you know about the Oxford movement, and that was back 200 years before we're talking about. The Oxford group basically had to start officially in 1921. There was a Lutheran minister named Frank Bushman, and I hope I pronounced his last name correctly. It's Buchman, who started the organization. And part of the reason he started the organization was that he had a to-do. He's a graduate of the Lutheran Seminary in my hometown, Philadelphia. And one of the things he ended up doing was taking charge of a hospice program. And the Lutheran Church, or the Lutheran Authority, decided not to increase how much money they were giving the organization. And he got angry and quit. and he took off, and he was in England, I think, not long afterwards, at a church in Keswick. And he says that he felt he had a revelation from God. And I'll paraphrase it. Basically, God said, "Get a life. You're angry at this group. It's eating you up, and it's not doing you any good. So get with it." And what he did, that wasn't the exact words, but don't worry about it. Basically, he realized that he needed to apologize to the organization. In other words, he came to a realization that there were some things that he was at fault with. He realized that the way he left and everything was hurting him. So he wrote a letter of apologies, and he realized that to accept and to apologize was indeed the way to help him feel better and possibly other people. So what he did was saying, I wonder if we can do this on a national scale. Now, since he was in Lutheran Seminary in Philadelphia, I suspect that he got exposed to the Society of Friends, or Quakers, the way they ran their services. And I was raised a Quaker. And whenever I go to a 12-step meeting, I feel right at home because there's no official leader, or at least there's a chairperson who organizes. And people there stand up and talk about things that they may have done wrong or experiences they've had, and in essence do confession. And they're better for it. And, they don't do so much confession in Quaker meeting, but certainly in AA. So what Bushman did was to form something he called originally, when it was founded in 1921, the First Century Christian Group. And what this consisted of people going around holding, and they said in some ways, house parties where people get together. They get together anonymously and talk about mistakes they've made. In other words, do confession. And people found that this works for them because from there, letting go of the shame that they feel by telling what actually happened, it moves it from shame to guilt. And shame, guilt is, I did something wrong. Shame is, I am that thing that's wrong. And that's what holds a lot of people back from absolving the issues that they're walking around with.
Yeah.
So this became eventually a worldwide organization. Now, so in other words, there are gatherings of people, sometimes it would be a week of this kind of thing, of people gathering and talking about things they've done wrong, and able to move on from there. And two people got involved with the Oxford movement. One was Bill Wilson. The other was Dr. Bob Smith, both of whom happened to be in Akron, Ohio. And through another friend in the Oxford movement, introduced the two of them. And because they were both alcoholics having trouble staying sober, they began to help each other stay sober. Now, the Oxford movement considered itself a life movement. That is, it wasn't affiliated, it was Christian, but it wasn't affiliated with any church. But the issue that they saw was the four principles that they felt that would take care of everything. One of the principles was certainly honesty, purity, unselfishness, and love as the core value which they were stressing to people who were involved in the Oxford movement. And it was called the Oxford movement because a group of students at Oxford University began to really get this ball rolling.
Well, Bill, it's really interesting that you're talking about this history, and they set it up in a particular ways with the 5 C's, and Frank, Mr. Bushman created like the 5 C's. What are the 5 C's, and how do they relate?
Well, the 5 C's starts off with conviction. In other words, you understand what you're doing, and then you make your confession to the group about what you've been doing. Then you have the decision to, in a sense, pardon yourself, which is the third word on there.
Confidence.
After you've made your confession.
Oh,
then
yeah.
Then there's the conversion. The conversion into the acceptance of of what we call a higher power, but of God. And then the final part is the continuance. Yeah. That is to take everything that you're doing right and continue it in the rest of your life. And this has nothing to do with addiction. It has nothing to do with any particular thing. Everybody was welcome to do all this. And so consequently, it was a kind of a generic place where people could talk about mistakes that they made and get them off their shoulders. That's extremely important. And that is, and what Bill W. and Dr. Bob took that and made it into the 12 steps that we know now. And they follow a very similar pattern, though I think I would put the first 2 steps in the conversion first.
Sure.
And then all the other things came after that, because you make the apologies, the 12 steps are set up that you come to prepare yourself to turn yourself over to a higher power. And then you go into the inventory to find out, and this is where people get into a lot of trouble. They think an inventory is everything bad that they ever did, and they don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. When inventory of a store is what you have as well as what you don't have. So when you're doing a moral inventory, you're looking at yourself as a whole. And then if there are some people like Frank Bushman did, you needed to apologize to, you do that, unless it would harm you or somebody else. Then you begin to change your life around to take on this new identity that you're creating and carry it to other people. That is the continuance part that is in AA. So it all hangs together. The big difference, and the difference that caused AA to be off on its own as a part instead of being with the Oxford movement, is that number one, Bill W. was an agnostic. He was not willing to call himself Christian, as far as I can understand. But more than that, he saw that he wanted to have his AA program open to all, no matter of any faith or no faith.
Yeah.
And so they made it that very clear. And at one point in AA early, a man stepped forward and said, "I'm a homosexual. Can I be in AA?" And of course, there was a lot of controversy back and forth around that. And that's where the tradition is said that AA is open to all. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking.
Yeah.
And that's how and the same thing with Marty Mann coming in. As a woman, this is back in, AA was founded in 1935. And men were most people saw alcoholics as male. And she said she was an advertising executive, and she came in and she got herself sober in AA. And I was lucky enough to meet her here in Denver.
Wow.
Back in the 70s. Short, with gravelly voice. I think she was a heavy smoker, but she was the one that created this side thing that I should mention, which is the National Council on Alcoholism, which was the education, separate from AA, but this was educating the public about what alcoholism is, and that made all the difference in the world. So Dr. Bob and Bill W. started in Akron, very small, 3 people. They found someone that they got sober, and then it grew slowly, but it began to develop because it worked. And people, by talking with people, able to get things off their shoulders rather than drinking to deal with them. And that's the key. And also learning to turn it over to a higher power. I had a friend of mine who was a counselor who told a client, we don't care if your higher power is your refrigerator.
Right.
You need something outside of yourself to make, to help you do what it is that you want to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, interestingly enough, when Bill and Dr. Bob were getting AA started, it was officially started in 1935, and the AA, what they call the Big Book, was written in 1937 by Bill W. and edited by those members they had in the area. It was 1937. And the book is, in fact, available still. We'll call it the Bible of AA, is available in Talking Library or in the Library of Congress
nice.
audiobook section. So somebody listening who wants to learn more about the steps and get an audio of the book, which I think would be good, especially for listening to all the sessions that are coming up here on Blindside.
Well, that's a good opportunity for me to jump in here and ask. You were talking about Bill and how he was Mr. Wilson was the agnostic one, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So how he transformed or kind of created these practical steps from these spiritual principles that we now know as the 12 steps. How did that come about?
Well, he was active in the Oxford group. Mm-hmm. Even though he had that agnostic, he was willing to accept that.
Yeah.
The idea of they're talking about God. But what he saw was that there were other alcoholics in the Oxford movement. A couple wrote books about getting sober in the Oxford movement. But what he saw was that these principles were what counted. And turning it over to a higher power, and it didn't matter what you named that higher power, that is something other than yourself. He saw the efficacy of that.
Mm-hmm.
And he started on his own to try to help some alcoholics get sober, and it just wasn't quite working. Then he met Dr. Bob, who was also a member of the Oxford movement.
Mm-hmm.
And he had come into the Oxford movement through Carl Jung, who was a protege of Sigmund Freud.
Yeah.
And Carl Jung said, Jesus will do more for you than I will. That's what he supposedly said. And so Dr. Bob got into the Oxford movement, but he still couldn't stay sober.
Mm.
But he was an Akron physician. And of course, Bill W. was a stockbroker, but based in Akron, Ohio. The two of them talked, and they kept each other sober.
Wow.
And the third party who remained anonymous, the three of them starting the group and talking and following the program that they were developing in AA, they got sobriety. And it made all the difference in the world. And from this very humble beginning, it went nationwide, and now it's worldwide.
Yeah. So with that being said, most people associate the 12-step program with Alcoholics Anonymous, and it's
Right.
just for alcoholics. But I'm assuming that through this conglomeration of people and this coming together of minds, there's this universality and adaptability with different struggles. Has it been applied to, drug addictions and other
Sure.
types of addictions?
Well, one of the interesting things was that there was a tiff in the Wilson household. They were having dinner. Lois and Bill were having dinner, and Bill thought, "Oh God, I've got a sober husband. We have a life together." And Bill suddenly said, "Oh, I've got to go to a meeting. I'll talk to you later." And she got so mad at him that she threw her slippers at him.
Oh.
And then she said to herself, I think I need some help. And what Lois did was take the essence of AA and gear it to the family and friends of alcoholics. Now, this is very important to people misunderstand this. Al-Anon, which is what it was called,
Okay.
started by Lois, is not for helping people get the alcoholic sober.
Okay.
It is for them to look at themselves and figure out how to live in a household with an alcoholic, or to live and relate to someone who's an alcoholic in a way that is constructive rather than destructive to you, to the Al-Anoner. Because sometimes in my practice, I've found that the spouses of alcoholics needed more help than the alcoholic.
Yeah, I've heard
And in
that.
fact, I've had situations where I'd work with a couple. The sober spouse would then announce she was divorcing her husband, who's now sober, and I hear through the grapevine, not long afterwards, that she married again another alcoholic.
Oh.
And because she had not gotten any recovery for herself in terms of there are certain benefits to spouses having your partner drunk all the time because you're in charge. And some people don't like to give up that autonomy or that authority.
Yeah.
And so when somebody gets sober, the dynamics of the family changes. And
Right. You have that conflict of leadership.
Right. Conflict of leadership and a whole kind of self-esteem issue. So consequently, Lois starting Al-Anon was a plus, and also, I think, in a sense, really helped people to see, the principles that are in AA applied as the Oxford movement saw it also to anything. So we have all kinds of 12-step meetings which run in a very similar way because it works.
Real quick, does the 12-step have anything to do, what is it called? Celebrate Recovery? Do you know what that is?
No, I haven't heard Celebrate Recovery. I know people do.
It's I'm not sure exactly what it is, but a lot of churches have Celebrate Recovery as
Celebrate. Yeah, well, right.
Yeah.
But you see, and sometimes people may take the essence of AA or the Oxford movement and create their own version of it, so to speak.
Gotcha. Okay.
And a celebration of recovery, definitely. And in a lot of times, certainly as a therapist, it doesn't matter to me whether they go into AA or a church kind of thing. The thing is getting sober.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, let's not worry about the semantics. As long
Right.
as they find a way to get sober.
Yeah.
And this is really the key. But unfortunately, a lot of people don't listen. They either they're. See, I mentioned the family because a lot of times I found that somebody will say, "Oh, if I were blind, I'd be drinking too."
Yeah.
Sorry, this is unacceptable.
Yeah.
And because all you're doing is enabling, and that's the dangerous thing, and that's why oftentimes it's very difficult to get people with disabilities sober, because everybody says, "Oh, that poor baby, let him drink or let her drink, and they'll be fine." No, they won't be, and they don't have an opportunity to get sobriety to be able to achieve some of the things that they're capable of doing. So that the family, in many ways, needs as much help as the individual.
Absolutely. Now we're going to be talking with quite a few guests who share in that sentiment. But Bill, before we wrap up, next week we're going to be talking about step one, and I'll let you kind of briefly overview step one. But as we frame this conversation around the blind and low vision community, why is this topic such an important one for the blind low vision community?
A couple reasons. Number one, just the numbers. You see, there's so many in the disability community who are unemployed, and so many people take pity rather than empathizing. They sympathize.
Yeah.
And they say, "Oh, that poor dear," and they just make us feel less than.
Gotcha.
And so that. And also, there wasn't a feeling that there was any help. It's very tough sometimes with someone who is blind to find a therapist that is blind, or find someone, or I used to go to a lot of conferences, and I never see another blind therapist, even though I know they're out there.
Yeah.
But the other thing is when they go into an AA meeting, they're going to be the only person with a disability, which is possible. But what has been really nice is that if someone wants to go to an AA meeting, they can call AA Intergroup, which is the kind of like the a clearinghouse,
Okay.
and ask for an accessible meeting.
Oh, okay.
And they've got lists of all the meetings that are accessible, that are ADA compliant, in locations that are ADA compliant. And they can also tell, and treatment centers are required to be ADA compliant. However, this isn't enforced as much as it should be. But you've got pain in the butts like me pointing that out to treatment programs and, try to keep doing it. Because there's no reason in the world why someone who wants help and has a disability can't get help and get the kind of help which is affirming instead of, "Oh, you poor dear."
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I came up with an acronym I use in some of the presentations, which is OYPD, "Oh, you poor dear," as being deadly for people with disabilities.
Yeah. That's awesome. I'm glad. Thank you, Bill, for sharing and shedding light on some of this history. I think it's important to know before we go down a road and a path where it is that we've come from. And I think you've done an amazing job at setting the stage for what's to come in the next couple of months, because
thank you.
We're going to talk about every single step. We're going to cover one step a week for the next 3 months. There's 12 steps. And, I'll let you talk about this step, but the step of admitting powerlessness, which is step number one. Can you give us a brief overview of this first step?
One of the things I want to add to just what you said, you don't have to be an alcoholic or an addict or anything like that, I think, to get benefit out of what we're going to be doing, because we're talking about a lifestyle.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're taught, the first step is really the important one. It says the powerlessness. That the person who does have an addiction needs to understand that willpower doesn't do it.
Yeah, right.
We know that, psychologically and every other way, willpower is worthless. I mean, willpower, I know what to do about certain things, but do I do it? No.
Right.
And I have to accept that I'm powerless over alcohol. And make a decision that I'm ready to quit.
Yeah.
If I'm an alcoholic, I've got to be ready to quit. The first step doesn't say quit. It says get yourself ready and turn your power over to something greater than yourself.
Well, and just like you said, it doesn't just apply to alcohol. It can apply to drugs, to smoking, to anger, to behavior issues, to pornography, to sex addiction. I mean,
it's a
you name
lifestyle
it.
thing.
Input whatever addiction term you want in there or life change that you want to make, and you can make that change just going through these 12 steps.
Right.
And as I'm doing, the research behind these and vetting these guests and having these conversations, I'm realizing there's a lot of things that I can benefit myself from these 12 steps. So I'm really excited to walk through this journey with you and with everybody in our listenership.
I am very grateful to having been involved in 12-step programs.
Yeah.
I forget them sometimes, but, we're all human. We don't do things perfectly, but we've got some guidelines that can be very helpful. And
Absolutely.
we hope that people will incorporate what they say in Al-Anon, for example, take what you like and leave the rest.
Yeah. Well, as we go through these next couple of months, we want to hear from you. And if you have a story or if you have an experience of being through AA, we would love to hear that story, and we would love to potentially put that on the air. So if you can, give us a call at 720-712-8856. Tell us your story, and we might air it if you're comfortable with that. If not, that's fine. Just send us an email saying, thanks for the show, or if you have any questions for Bill or any of our upcoming guests. It's really important. I know we answered a couple of questions last week, and we're getting some good feedback from that. Yeah. But if you've got those questions or stories, we really want to hear them, because your story may be the one that influences the next story.
You got it.
Just want to put that out there.
And I think that there's also, I can almost guarantee you, when you tell your story, it is such a relief. It is important to another person to hear it. It's also the relief to people to just let it out.
Yeah.
And savor the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Bill, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap this show up?
I'm excited to be talking about AA.
Yeah.
I went to my first workshop on alcoholism in, I think it was 66.
Wow.
Yeah. Like I say, the Stone Age. And the thing is, I have seen so many changes in the field over the years, and I've had to change a lot of things in what I did what I've done as a therapist. As we learn more and more, as we begin to understand, and we begin to hear, we learn from the scientists and so forth, but we learn so much more from the individual we're working with.
Sure.
So we hope that you'll learn, all of you will learn a lot over the next 12 weeks.